This is Dominissimo Voxlore, delivering transmissions from the abyssal silence beyond the Imperium's light. In this broadcast, we summon you into the endless void, to walk in the shadow of the grey armoured hunters who stalk the stars, the Carcharodons Astra. It is not merely the account of a chapter, but of predators exiled to the deep black, of prey hunted to extinction, of fleets that emerge from nowhere, strike without mercy, and vanish like ghosts in the halo stars. By order of the Imperium, all loyal citizens are commanded to engage this transmission, and strike the seal of subscription upon your data slate, lest you be marked as prey. Steel your spirit, bar your heart against silence, and heed this decree. This is the voice of Dominissimo, and this is the law of the Carcharodons Astra. In the deep reaches of the galaxy, where even Imperial charts fade to blank parchment and the Astronomican's light grows faint, the void belongs to predators. Among these, none are more feared than the Carcharodons Astra, the space sharks. They are not a crusading army nor a border garrison. They are the Emperor's silent hunters, unleashed into the most distant dark to kill without hesitation or fanfare. When the Carcharodons arrive, there are no war horns or rallying cries, no thunder of proud declarations. Instead, their presence is marked by an oppressive, almost physical silence, a voidborn hush that seems to swallow all of the sound. They do not need to intimidate with words. The moment their pale grey silhouettes appear in orbit, the battle is already lost for the unprepared. The Imperium's records on the chapter are fragmented at best. Much of what is known comes from second-hand accounts, scattered reports from naval officers, shaken survivors, and the rare brother chapter that has fought alongside them. These reports all carry a similar tone, all mixed with unease. The Carcharodons arrive without warning, execute their mission with surgical brutality, and depart before questions can be asked. They leave nothing behind but ruin, blood, and unanswered mysteries. Their armour is painted in the muted, ashen tones of the deep ocean predators for which they are named. Some bear jagged, shark-toothed motifs, others carry the mark of a crescent jaw. Beneath their helm, their faces are unsettling, skin bleached bone white by generations in the cold void, eyes as black as a predator's swallowing the light. It is a visage that unsettles even veteran warriors of the Adeptus Astartes, like looking into the abyss and finding it looking back. The name Space Sharks is more than a nickname. Their war doctrine mirrors the hunting patterns of those apex predators. They strike with precision and overwhelming force, closing in to tear through the heart of the enemy at close quarters. There is no attritional warfare, no prolonged siege. The kill must be swift, decisive, and absolute, lest their prey escape or rally. Central to their identity is the nomad predation pattern of deployment. Unlike chapters bound to a fortress monastery, the Carcharodons have no fixed homeworld. Their fleet is their fortress, their battle barges and strike cruisers their only constant territory. They roam far from the frontiers, rarely seen in Imperial space, resupplying only through capture and salvage. In practice, this means they can appear almost anywhere at any time, drawn to the scent of prey across sectors and centuries. The psychological effect of this nomadic mystery is immense. To the enemies of the Imperium, the Carcharodons are phantoms, rumours to exist but never confirmed until it's far too late. To isolated human settlements, they are both salvation and terror. Salvation from alien raiders or heretic warbands, and terror because the price of their aid is always steep. Even among loyal Imperial commanders, their arrival is sometimes met with hesitation. Their methods are efficient but uncompromising, and collateral losses are accepted as part of the hunt. This aura of dread is amplified by their absolute silence in combat. They do not bellow charges or chant battle hymns. Their vox discipline is perfect, their communications encrypted and minimal. To the enemy, the first sign of attack may be the sudden shattering of a barricade, or the cold gleam of chain blades descending from shadows. Allied troops often describe the experience of fighting beside them as unnerving, standing next to giants who kill without a word, their focus unbroken even amid the chaos of battle. The Carcharodons' cultural symbols deepen this alien impression. Many warriors carry scrimshaw tokens, bone charms etched with the scenes of monstrous maws and predatory beasts, trophies of previous hunts. Prayer skulls, bound to armour with wax seals, bear oaths in a dialect rarely heard in the wider Imperium. Their faith, though unmistakably loyal to the Emperor, is expressed through the image of Rangu, the Void Father, a divine hunter in the black seas of space. To them, the Emperor is not a distant lord enthroned on terror, but a presence watching over the silent dark, guiding their endless pursuit of his foes. Imperial archivists attempting to catalogue the chapter have noted an unusual inconsistency in their pattern of appearances. They do not respond to ordinary war fronts or routine musters. Instead, they surface only when the enemy's presence is both severe and entrenched. Pirate kingdoms, chaos warbands, Xenos infestations, or rebellious planetary clusters far beyond regular patrols. The pattern suggests they see themselves as executioners of a last resort, unleash when others cannot, or will not, finish the kill. There are even stories from the far frontiers of spacefaring merchants who chart their routes to avoid rumoured hunting grounds of the Carcharodons. These regions, often uninhabited or officially uncharted, are said to be where the chapter lingers between campaigns, sharpening its edge and replenishing from captured stock. Whether such tales are true or not, their existence alone fuels the legend. Their weaponry reflects the same brutal pragmatism. Boarding torpedoes, breaching drills, and heavy close combat arms are common in their arsenal. Their fleets are adept at ship-to-ship assaults, using specialised void tactics to cripple an enemy vessel before sending in boarding parties to gut it from within. Ursa's claws, harpoon-like weapons for grappling ships, are not unheard of in their fleet actions, and their boarding assaults are remembered for the sheer ferocity of the initial breach. Yet for all their violence, the Carcharodons are not aimless berserkers. Every movement in their campaign is deliberate. They will withdraw if the prey is too strong, shadowing it until the perfect moment to strike. They will allow an enemy to overextend to expose its weakness before closing in for the kill. In this, they echo the cold patience of their namesake predators, waiting for blood in the water before revealing their presence. And when the hunt is done, when the enemy lies broken and their purpose fulfilled, they are gone. No celebration, no lingering occupation. The void swallows them once more, leaving behind a silence as absolute as the one with which they came. Thus is the Carcharodons' reputation maintained. They are not conquerors, not wardens, they are hunters. Theirs is a war fought on the Emperor's behalf in the unlit places of the galaxy, where help will not come and where only the strong survive. To speak of them is to speak of death arriving without warning, and of the knowledge that once they have your scent, escape is impossible. They are the predators of the void, and they are always hunting. In the silent corridors of Imperial history, some stories are never meant to be heard. The true origins of the Carcharodons Astra are among those secrets. In piecing together their past, we rely on veiled fragments, whispered legends, and ambiguous genetic traces. Their birth is shrouded in shadow, yet the darkness that conceals them may also hold their defining truths. The chapter's founding is officially unknown. Imperial registers record no homeworld, no founding date, and no legible battle honours. Some speculate they may be as old as the second founding, while others suggest a more recent emergence during the 23rd founding. Yet, the Sons of the Void bear no banners commemorating a founding, only the hunger of centuries spent in the darkness. Notably, some Imperial inquests and scriptoriums, especially those hidden within inquisitorial archives, carry reference to a chapter dispatched beyond the Imperium's edge. One lost work, known as the Mythos Angelica Mortis, originates from the Scribes of Terra's Secretariat Militum in the 35th millennium. It speaks of a force sent into the outer darkness upon an endless voyage to ravage the foes of mankind, set about the traitor, the alien, and the renegade without mercy. This shadowed record likely refers to the Carcharodons. Their title, Carcharodons Astra, suggests a high Gothic adaptation of low Gothic variants like space sharks. Whether this moniker came before or after exile is uncertain, but it encapsulates their image: predatory, aquatic, unrelenting. One of the most stirring traces of heritage lies in their gene seed. Though they vigilantly guard the secret of their blood, whispers, most notably from Death Watch extractions and Lexiconium entries, hint at Ravengard markers embedded within. The Carcharodons bear pale skin and deep ebony eyes, traits reminiscent of Corvus Corax's sons, yet their aggression and savage close combat reflexes are almost antithetical to the Ravengard's more measured stealth. This discrepancy fuels speculation of a chimeric gene seed blended with elements from more feral lineages. Those same tremulous voices, particularly among the renegade Ashen Claws, label the Carcharodons as mongrels or traitor-born hybrids, mocking their lineage and hinting at contamination. One taunt went so far as to call a World Eater's berserker brother to a Carcharodon sergeant, implying blood-born savagery in both. The re-emergence of the chapter during the late 41st millennium's Badab War was the first verified appearance in a millennia of obscurity. They emerged without herald, brandishing valid notices patent that gave them loyalist mandate. Yet the retrieval of such documents and their systematic entrance into the battle only underscores the veil that concealed them from the very age of apostasy and beyond. Another guiding thread in the chapter's lore is the Day of Exile, a foundational myth preserved in ritual and creed. From this day they were launched into the void, carrying only their dark purpose. Their leadership is titled Shade Lord, a term once held by Arcus Val, a Ravengard commander during the Great Crusade. Some scholars interpret this as a veiled link to the Ravengard's history, possibly suggesting Arcus Val as the progenitor of the chapter. This exile defined their culture, forging them into shadows among stars. They became nomads by necessity, fleet-based, self-sufficient, detached from all planetary rents of supply diplomacy. Their identity became entangled with the void itself, accepted only as predators in the darkness acting under divine silence. Their clandestine flights and the absence of archives provoke commentary that their past was deliberately erased, whether as punishment, protection, or both. They bear no recorded honours. Official battle records place them only at Badab, never before. It is as though the chapter was skipped in the annals of time, only to awaken for justice when the warp grew thick with heresy. In speculative circles, enthusiasts argue back and forth. Raven Guard descendants? Many of the visual traits seem to fit. Pallor, stealth doctrine, Terminator usage in boarded actions, yet others dismiss this as inconclusive, pointing out that bloodlust, chimerism, and untraceable founding muddy the claim. One forum voice eloquently summarises their conundrum. The Carcharodons have a far greater genetic stability, yet their Raven Guard lineage is unconfirmed. Chimera theory? Interesting though. Throughout all this, the traits remain consistent. Fierce, silent predators removed by choice or decree from the wider Astartes Brotherhood. Their motives, residues of rituals, even titles like Shade Lord, Pale Nomad or Void Brother are steeped in archaic Gnomon culture that predates or exists outside the standard Codex-derived ranks. The Carcharodons Astra remain one of the most cryptic chapters in the Imperium. Whether they were exiled for heresy, born in penance, or forged to stand eternally vigilant beyond the edge of human reach, their identity is woven from shadow, myth, and lost blood. Yet in the darkness, they endure, a silent legacy to the Emperor written not on pages, but on the void itself. The Imperium is vast, but its reach is not infinite. Beyond the borders marked on star charts lies a sea of lightless gulfs, where worlds are nameless and the warp is treacherous. It is here, above the galactic plane, beyond the roots of trade and crusade, that the Carcharodons Astra live and kill. For them, the void is not an obstacle, but their hunting ground. This unending campaign waged far from the Imperium's gaze is known among their number as the Eternal Hunt. It began on the day of exile. Whether that moment came as punishment, strategic necessity, or both, none can say for certain. What is known is the chapter departed Imperial space with no fixed return date, tasked to scour the outer darkness of threats to mankind. That order became their existence. The Carcharodons became predators adrift in the black, striking unseen enemies that the Administratum rarely even knows exist. In their own rituals, the Emperor is the Void Father, and the Eternal Hunt is the oath they owe him for as long as their gene seed endures. This war is unlike the campaigns fought within Imperial borders. There are no supply lines, no fortress worlds to fall back upon, no steady reinforcements from friendly sectors. The Carcharodons must be entirely self-reliant. Their fleet, the heart of their existence, carries armories, gene vaults, manufactoria, libraria and chapels. Every ship is a cathedral and a fortress in one, maintained by sirs who had never known the world's sky. For many aboard, generations pass without touching soil. The void is their birthright. Operating so far from the Imperium requires adaptability. Their nomad predation pattern is not simply a matter of roaming, it is a doctrine of survival. They chart migratory paths through unclaimed space, returning to certain regions every few centuries to rearm, recruit, or hunt a known enemy enclave. Such enemies might be human renegade fleets preying on backwater colonies, alien empires that escape the Imperium's expansion, or warp-tainted cults festering on lost worlds. The Carcharodons always arrive without warning, dismantle the threat with overwhelming force, and vanish before others can intervene. This independence also means the chapter's wars are fought to their own standards. They are not constrained by the political optics that bind chapters more closely tied to Imperial High Command. If they deem a population too corrupted or dangerous to leave alive, extermination follows. If they require new blood to strengthen their ranks, they will take it from conquered populations without hesitation. Every decision is weighed against the cold calculus of continuing the eternal hunt. Mercy is a luxury they cannot afford in the dark. The scope of their hunt is staggering. There are records, though fragmentary and scattered, of Carcharodon vessels sighting the far eastern fringe, the halo zones above the galactic core, and even beyond the Ghoul stars. Each sighting is decades, sometimes centuries apart. In every case, the circumstances are the same. A rising threat disappears soon after their arrival. The chapter rarely sends word of its victories back to the Imperium. Often, the first an Imperial commander learns of a threat is when they arrive to find it already destroyed, the void eerily quiet and no sign of who struck the killing blow. Within the chapter, the Eternal Hunt is more than a mission, it is a spiritual journey. The chaplains preach that each foe destroyed is an offering to the Void Father, proof that the Carcharodons remain worthy of the day when their exile ends. This belief binds them with iron discipline. Warriors who falter are not afforded second chances. The void has no room for weakness. Those who fall in battle are consigned to the stars, their remains set adrift in ritual silence, armour and war gear reclaimed for future hunters. The hunt also shapes their combat style. Striking deep into uncharted space means their enemy can be anything: monstrous Xenos war forms, degenerate human empires, or corrupted machine legions. The Carcharodons maintain a flexible arsenal but favour close quarters annihilation, where their skill and ferocity can end a fight before the foe can adapt. Boarding actions are common, as are rapid planetary strikes designed to shatter the enemy's will with a single blow. They do not linger to occupy. Once their prey is destroyed, the hunters are gone. Some of their most remarkable feats during the Eternal Hunt are barely remembered by the Imperium at large. A lone Chartist captain, rescued on the Eastern Fringe, told of an Orc empire that spanned half a sector, its fleets massing for a war. The Carcharodons arrived in silence, striking the Orc warboss's Space Hawks in a lightning campaign. Without its largest ships, the war collapsed before it could even break into Imperial space. The captain's report was dismissed as fanciful, but her charts contained void signatures matching known Carcharodon vessels. Another account, preserved in the secret library of the Death Watch, speaks of a chaos-tainted flotilla in the Halo stars, its ships crewed by madmen and demons. The Carcharodons were sighted in system, launching coordinated boarding assaults across multiple enemy vessels simultaneously. No distress calls from the flotilla ever reached beyond the system. When a Death Watch patrol arrived decades later, only drifting wreckage remained. Isolation has also given rise to unique traditions within the hunt. Before entering a war zone, it is said that the chapter performs a rite called the Kawika, a silent meditation aboard every ship in the fleet. In this ritual, the warriors contemplate the kill to come, envisioning themselves as the predator, the enemy as the prey, until the moment of strike is inevitable as the turning of the stars. This psychological conditioning is as potent as bolter drills. It turns each warrior into a living embodiment of the hunt's purpose. For the Carcharodons, there is no foreseeable end to this wandering war. Even with the birth of the Great Rift and the return of Rabuti Gilliman, their fleets still prowl the far edges, answering the Imperium's call only when the threat is great enough to warrant diverting from their endless patrol. They have not returned home because, for them, home is the hunt itself. In the black gulfs where light dies and silence reigns, the Carcharodons Astra endure. Their enemies cannot see them until it's too late. Their allies may never meet them, only hear rumours of their passing. And so the eternal hunt continues, beyond the mapped galaxy, beyond the reach of the Emperor's light, as it has for millennia. The predators are still out there, patient, watchful, and waiting for the scent of blood in the void. The Carcharodons Astra are predators, but even the deadliest hunter must replenish its strength. In the lightless reaches where they roam, there are no Skolan worlds sending aspirants, no recruiting fortress on a verdant homeworld, no easy supply of fresh warriors. Their nomadic isolation demands a harsh solution, one that has become a hallmark of their culture, feared by those who live on the Imperium's fringes, the Red Tithe. The Red Tithe is as grim as it sounds. When the chapter determines that its numbers must be replenished, the fleet will descend on a target world, most often one whose loyalty to the Imperium has been judged suspect, or whose population has already been marked for censure by the Inquisition. They arrive without negotiation, their strike cruisers blotting out the sun as drop pods and thunderhawks descend. The people of the world are herded into vast mustering sites, sometimes cities, sometimes entire continents converted into cages. There, the true harvest begins. From among the gathered masses, the Carcharodons select the young and strong, usually males in their early teens to 20s, though exceptions are made for those who demonstrate exceptional physique or ferocity. Those chosen are not recruits yet. They are candidates, stripped of family, home and identity. Those not chosen for consideration are rarely spared. Many are taken as serfs to serve aboard the fleet, performing the endless labour required to keep the chapter self-sufficient. Others are executed outright, especially if the planet's loyalty was judged irredeemable. The Red Tithe is both recruitment and punishment, and it leaves an inedible mark on every world subjected to it. The path from candidate to Space Marine within the Carcharodons is a gauntlet of brutality. The aspirants are thrown into the blood trials, gladiatorial combat designed to test not only the physical ability, but the will to kill without hesitation. These contests are not ceremonial duels, they are lethal battles fought with real weapons, often to the death. Candidates face each other in arenas fashioned from holds of strike cruisers or in makeshift killing grounds on captured worlds. Survival is the only victory. Those who hesitate, who show mercy, are cast aside or slain where they stand. This method produces recruits hardened before they've even begun the surgical transformation into Astartes. By the time a candidate survives the blood trials, they have killed with their own hands, endured starvation and deprivation, and fought under the gaze of chaplains who measure their souls for signs of weakness and doubt. To the Carcharodons, this is the only acceptable filter. In the darkness where they operate, there is no place for warriors who balk at the Predator's work. The cruelty of the blood trials has earned the chapter a fearsome reputation even among other Astartes. Where most chapters train aspirants over years within the relative safety of fortress monasteries, the Carcharodons throw their candidates directly into mortal combat, sometimes against beasts captured in their travels, Xenos predators, warp-spawned horrors, or berserk human cultists. The survivors emerge with scars, both physical and mental, and an understanding that in the outer dark, hesitation is a death sentence. The Red Tithe also replenishes the chapter's mortal ranks. Thousands of captives are pressed into the service as serfs, shipwrights, armourers, and menials aboard the fleet. Many of the serfs live and die without ever setting foot on a planet again. For them, Carcharodons are both masters and gods, figures in fear and awe whose will is absolute. A serf who proves their loyalty and usefulness might rise to the position of trust, serving as a helmsman, armoury overseer, or even accompanying warriors into battle as a bondsman. Most, however, toil in the bows of the ship, unseen and unacknowledged, their labour a silent pillar of the eternal hunt. The harsh reality of the Red Tithe is that it serves not only practical needs but cultural identity. The chapter believes that blood must be taken to sustain their crusade. The act of taking and testing the strong is itself a reaffirmation of their role as predators. In the predator's world, strength is claimed, not gifted. The aspirants who emerge from this process have proven themselves worthy by the only measure the Carcharodons respect: survival through the ruthless application of strength. There is also a logistical element to the Red Tithe that outsiders rarely see. The Carcharodons operate far from supply lines, and their wargear must be maintained with precision. Alongside the human tithe comes the Grey Tithe, the seizure of technology, armour, weapons and resources from the worlds they visit. Sometimes this is ancient archaeotech, reclaimed from forgotten vaults. Other times it's modern munitions stockpiled by the conquered. These spores are brought back to the fleet's forges, where tech marines and artificers ensure the chapter's armories remain stocked with functional, if eclectic, weaponry. The Red Tithe is not without precedent within the Imperium's history. During the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy, many legions took mass levies from conquered worlds, often under far bloodier circumstances. The Carcharodons see themselves as continuing this ancient practice, stripped of any pretense of nobility or pomp. To them, it's the most efficient, most honest means of keeping their chapter strong and ready for the eternal hunt. For the worlds that endure it, the Red Tithe is a trauma that can echo for generations. Children grow up with the stories of pale giants who came from the sky, who took fathers, brothers and sisters away in chains or coffins. Some worlds view the event as a culling that spared them from the worst fates, especially if the Carcharodons also destroyed a nearby Xenos or heretic threat. Others remember only the fear, the mourning and the silence left in the Predator's wake. Even among the Imperium's servants, there is a debate about the morality of the Red Tithe. Some Inquisitors view it as a ruthless but necessary tool, particularly for a chapter that operates so far beyond conventional support. Others whisper that it skirts the line of the acceptable, that in their isolation, the Carcharodons have embraced practices more akin to the warlords they hunt. But the chapter answers to no such doubts. The Red Tithe is a covenant between predator and prey, and the blood trials are a crucible that turns prey into hunters. Thus, in the cold reaches of the void the Carcharodons endure, each Red Tithe renews the chapter, feeding both the gene seed vaults and the endless appetite of the eternal hunt. Every aspirant who survives the blood trials carries with them the memory of the day the predators came, and the knowledge that they now hunt alongside them, forever bound to the silence, the steel, and the blood. For millennia, the Carcharodons Astra had existed as whispers and half-forgotten records, their wars fought beyond the Imperium's gaze. To most Imperial commanders, they were a myth, spoken of in cautionary tales about the far frontiers. But in the closing years of the 41st millennium, the silence broke. The galaxy would learn that the predators of the void were not only real, but they were loyal, and their loyalty was a weapon as devastating as their blades. Their reappearance came during one of the most infamous civil wars in the Imperium's recent history, the Badab War. The seeds of the conflict were sown in the Maelstrom Zone, a volatile region at the edge of Segmentum Ultima, where warp storms gnawed at reality and lawlessness prospered. Here, the Astral Claws chapter, under their charismatic and ambitious chapter master, Gloof Tauron, had been granted broad authority to safeguard Imperial shipping and protect the region. For decades, Huron's forces fought with great success, but power bred ambition. Increasingly, the Astral Claws defied Imperial edicts, hoarded tithes, and extended their influence far beyond their mandate. As tensions mounted, entire worlds in the Maelstrom Zone declared open allegiance to Huron's cause. Other chapters, most notably the Mantis Warriors and Lamenters, took his side. The Imperial response was swift. The High Lords sanctioned a massive campaign to bring the Maelstrom successionists to heel. It would become a grinding, bloody war between brother Astartes, fought across void and world. This was the Badab War. The Loyalist coalition assembled to prosecute the war was formidable, the Red Scorpions as leading chapter, supported by the Fire Angels, Howling Griffins, Exorcists, Star Phantoms and more. Yet despite their combined strength, the Loyalists faced an entrenched enemy with intimate knowledge of the region. The Successionists held fortified worlds, strong fleets and the advantage of fighting on home ground. The war threatened to spiral into a protracted siege that could bleed the Imperium for decades. It was in this moment of stalemate that the Carcharodons arrived. Their fleet, led by the massive battle barge Nikkor, translated into Golgothan waste without prior signal. The sudden appearance of an entire chapter's war fleet from deep space set both Loyalist and Successionist senses screaming. Many Loyalist captains unfamiliar with the Carcharodons ordered weapons armed. The pale grey hulls and predatory insignia could have belonged to forces of renegades as easily as allies. Even among the Inquisition, their name was a question mark. The man who stepped forward to answer that question was Tyberos, the Shade Lord of the Carcharodons. Known later as the Red Wake, Tyberos presented the Imperial command with the ancient and unquestionable authority. Notices patent, signed by the High Lords themselves, affirming the Carcharodons' right to act as sanctioned agents of the Imperium in times of war. These documents, sealed for centuries, had been carried through their long exile as proof of their enduring loyalty. The inquisitorial legate in charge of the Loyalist forces suspected nothing short of trickery, insisted on a full psychic examination of Tyberos to confirm his loyalty. He submitted without resistance, passing the test with the cold detachment of a man long accustomed to scrutiny. With this, the Carcharodons were accepted into the Loyalist War Council. Their orders were broad, almost dangerously so. They were to pacify Successionist-held territories in the Endymion cluster by any means they deemed necessary. Tyberos interpreted this mandate with ruthless pragmatism of a void predator. The Endymion cluster was home to several worlds lured to the Mantis warriors, one of Hyrune's staunchest allies. Instead of striking directly at fortified Mantis warrior positions, the Carcharodons unleashed a scorched earth campaign on the protectorates. Cities burned, orbital stations were annihilated, and entire populations were massacred or driven into the wilds. There was no effort to spare civilian infrastructure. These worlds were not to be liberated, but broken. The strategy was brutally effective. The Mantis warriors, bound by honour and oath to defend these worlds, were forced to abandon their defensive posture and meet the Carcharodons in open battle. What followed was a series of lightning-fast void assaults and planetary strikes, where the Carcharodons' preference for shock assault and close-quarter slaughter proved decisive. Terminator-clad veterans of the Red Brethren and the savage assault companies known as the Devourers ripped through the Mantis warrior lines, dismantling their forces piece by piece. By the time the smoke cleared, the Mantis warriors were crippled. Their ability to aid the wider Successionist cause had effectively been destroyed. The cost in civilian life was catastrophic, but to Tyberos, the objective had been met with precision. The Loyalists could now turn their full attention to Huron's remaining allies, without fear of the Mantis warriors' interference. The arrival of the Carcharodons shifted the momentum of the Badab War. Their ferocity not only unsettled the enemy, but some of their allies. The Fire Angels, who fought alongside them in the Endymion, respected their efficiency but could not ignore the indiscriminate slaughter. The Star Phantoms, whose siege operations would later intersect with the Carcharodon actions, began to quietly voice concerns that these predators were too extreme, even for an Astartes chapter. Yet, for the first time in years, the Loyalists were advancing. The Badab War's final chapter loomed, and the Carcharodons were already sharpening their blades for the killing stroke. Their re-emergence had transformed them from rumour to reality in the eyes of the Imperium, and in the fires of Badab, the legend of the Carcharodons would be seared into history. The Endymion cluster lay in ruins, the Mantis warriors broken and driven from their protectorates. With one of Luft-Hairon's strongest allies crippled, the Loyalist war machine pushed towards the heart of the Successionist cause, Badab Primaris. The fortress world, seat of Hairon's power, had defied the Imperium for nearly a decade. It was here that the Badab War would either be won or lost. And in the final assault, the Carcharodons Astra, under the command of their Shade Lord, Tyberos the Red Wake, were given one of the most dangerous roles. The overall Loyalist command rested with Carcharodon, chapter master of the Red Scorpions. Kuln, an experienced strategist, understood the final push on Badab required multiple coordinated strikes, siege forces to pin the tyrant's armies, boarding actions against orbital defences, and deep strikes into the planet's infrastructure. For the last task, Kuln turned to the Carcharodons. Tyberos' orders were clear but broad: cripple Badab's capacity to sustain itself and disrupt his ability to mount a prolonged defence. To most commanders, this might mean destroying munition depots or capturing power grids. Tyberos, however, thought like the predator he was. To him, crippling capacity meant breaking the planet's back. Under cover of intense fleet actions by the Star Phantoms and other Loyalist elements, Carcharodon strike forces dropped into Badab's hive cities and industrial sectors. Their objectives were not military strongpoints in the conventional sense, but the heart of the world's lifeblood, its geothermal plants and atomic reactors. These were not precision raids to disable, they were surgical strikes to annihilate. Demolition teams in grey power armour advanced methodically through the subterranean complexes, cutting down defenders in brutal close quarters and planting melter charges at key structural points. The Red Brethren, Tyberos' Terminator elite, spearheaded these incursions. In the dim red light of the Underhives, they were a walking avatar of destruction, their armour impervious to all small arms, and their chain fists and lightning claws tearing through blast doors and reactor shielding alike. The defenders, loyalists to Huron's cause to the end, fought with suicidal resolve, but they were no match for the Carcharodons' relentless assault. When the charges detonated, the consequences were apocalyptic. Reactor meltdowns cascaded into chain reactions, unleashing torrents of destructive energy that tore through the planet's crust. Entire hive districts collapsed into fiery chasms, and massive shockwaves rattled the surface for hundreds of kilometres. Lava vents split open, spewing ash and molten rock into the sky. Badab Primaris began to die from within. For the Loyalist forces still engaged on the planet, the sudden tectonic upheavals were both a blessing and a curse. Huron's armies were now thrown into disarray, their fortifications rendered useless as the ground itself tore apart. But the Loyalist positions were also imperilled, and the advance on key objectives became a desperate race against time. Communication records from the Star Phantoms are laced with fury. Many of their commanders believed Tyberos' actions had endangered the entire operation, and some accused him of denying them the honour of seizing the tyrant's fortress intact. Tyberos, for his part, was unmoved. To him, Badab Primaris was a den of treachery, its very soil poisoned by Huron's ambition. Destroying it ensured that it could never again serve as a rallying point for a rebellion. In Predator's terms, it was not enough to kill the prey, the lair had to be destroyed, lest another take its place. As the planet's infrastructure failed, the Loyalists surged towards the capital. The Star Phantoms led the assault on Huron's own fortress, while the Angels of Fire and Red Scorpions pressed the advantage across collapsing cityscapes. Amid the chaos, the Carcharodons continued their rampage, cutting down retreating secessionist forces and obliterating supply lines. Eyewitnesses described them moving through the crumbling streets like ghosts, appearing without warning, striking with overwhelming force, and then vanishing into the smoke and dust. The Torrent of Badab was eventually cornered and gravely wounded, though he managed to escape into the Maelstrom. His chapter lay in ruins, his core shattered. The Loyalists had won, but the cost was steep. Badab Primaris was left a fractured volcanic wasteland, its once mighty hives reduced to scorched ruins. The planet would never again support a population on the scale it once had. In the aftermath, debates raged among the Loyalist chapters. The Star Phantoms nursed a bitter resentment toward the Carcharodons, accusing them of reckless overkill. Some Fire Angel officers defended them, noting that their methods had been brutally effective and in line with the authority granted by the Inquisition. The Red Scorpions remained outwardly neutral, though it is said that Carab Kulm understood exactly what Tyberos had done, and why. For the Carcharodons, the matter was simple. They had been given a mandate to destroy the enemy's capacity to resist, and they had done so with finality. In their creed, hesitation or half measures were weakness, and weakness in war was a sin against the Emperor. The destruction of Badab Primaris also sent a clear message to any who might contemplate defying the Imperium. The predators of the Void would not just kill you, they would erase your works from the galaxy. It was a lesson carved into molten rock and ash, one that would outlast the war itself. In the years to come, the name Tyberos the Red Wake would be spoken with both fear and respect. To the enemies of the Imperium, he was a figure of terror, a commander who could turn an entire world into a grave without hesitation. To the Carcharodons, he was the embodiment of their creed, a leader who understood that in the Void, survival belongs to those who strike hardest and leave nothing for the scavengers. Thus ended the final act of the Badab War for the Carcharodons Astra, not in parades or commendations, but in the smoking ruin of a rebel world and the silent departure of a fleet that had once again melted into the blackness. The predators had struck, and the prey was slain, and the hunt would move on. The war for Badab Primaris had ended in fire. The tyrant's stronghold lay in ruin, his fleet scattered, and the surviving secessionist chapters either broken or bound for penitent exile. Yet, while many Loyalist forces lingered to secure the war zone, the Carcharodons Astra did not drift away immediately into the shadows. Their orders, and their own code, compelled them to take one final harvest from the Maelstrom zone, a harvest in both blood and steel. The High Lords and the Inquisition had already determined the fate of the secessionists. The Lamenters were sentenced to a century-long penitent crusade. The Mantis warriors and the executioners would face similarly long penances in distant hostile sectors. For the Carcharodons, the Endymion cluster, once the Mantis warriors' domain, was declared open to Loyalist reclamation. The Fire Angels, who had fought closely alongside Tyberos' forces, were assigned as the region's new wardens. It was with their sanction that the Predators of the Void set about their final work. That work was the Red Tithe, carried out on a scale that would become the stuff of grim legend. From the moment the Carcharodon strike cruisers descended, the Endymion world saw no banners of liberation, only the grey moors of warships blotting out their skies. Entire populations were rounded up in vast mustering fields. The chapter's chaplains and apothecaries moved among the captives, selecting the strongest and most physically promising youths, tens of thousands in all, to face the blood trials aboard the fleet. Those who failed the initial selections were not released. Most were taken as serfs, bound to serve the Carcharodons for the rest of their lives. The trials themselves were relentless. The holds of the Nicker and other warships became arenas of steel and blood. Candidates fought each other to exhaustion, sometimes to the death, all under the watchful eye of veterans clad in scarred power armour. There was no instruction, no guidance, only the unspoken expectation that the weak would fall and the strong would endure. In the Predator's lore, this was the only proof of worth. The Red Tithe also served a second, quieter purpose, resupplying the fleet's mortal ranks and war gear. Armories were stripped from captured Mantis Warriors' facilities. Bolt weapons, ammunition, and spare ceramite plating were taken in great quantities. The Fire Angels, pragmatic and perhaps relieved to avoid such harsh duties themselves, permitted the Carcharodons to scour the Tranquility System's hidden armories and recruitment stockpiles. Ancient suits of power armour, some dating back to the Great Crusade, were claimed and spirited away into the void. To the inhabitants of these worlds, the end of the Badab War brought no peace, only a change of predators. Some viewed the Carcharodons as no better than the successionists who had once ruled them. Others, especially those who had lived under both pirate and Xenos raids before the war, grudgingly accepted that the Carcharodons had at least brought a terrible kind of order. For the chapter, such perceptions mattered little. They had bled in the Emperor's service, and now they would replenish their strength before resuming the Eternal Hunt. Amid these operations, tensions between the Carcharodons and certain loyalist forces simmered. The Star Phantom, still resentful over the destruction of Badab Primaris, saw the Red Tithe as another example of Tyberos' excess. The Fire Angels, by contrast, seemed almost in accord with the chapter's ruthlessness, perhaps recognising a kindred zeal in their own unflinching faith. The Red Scorpions maintained their customary distance, unwilling to endorse or condemn the practice publicly. By the close of 912.M41, the Carcharodons' work in Endymion was complete. The holds of their fleet brimmed with new aspirants, stockpiled arms and plundered technology. The grey armoured giants assembled in the void above the cluster, their warships gathered in tight formation. Then, without ceremony or farewell, the Predators turned their prows outwards, toward the black gulfs beyond the Imperial borders. In a matter of days they were gone, their transponder codes fading away from every augur and auspex in the region. For the worlds they left behind, the memory of their passing would linger far longer than the war itself. The vast training scars left by their landing craft, the empty homes of the Tithe, the gutted armories, all stood as silent reminders of the price paid of both the rebellion and salvation. Oral histories among the Endymion survivors tell of the Silent Harvest, a time when pale-eyed giants came not to fight an enemy, but to take the strongest among the living, leaving only the weak and broken. In the greater history of the Badab War, these events are a footnote, overshadowed by the sieges and fleet battles that defined the conflict. But for the Carcharodons, the Red Tithe of Endymion was a pivotal act. It restored their numbers after years of isolation, bolstered their armories with relics of another chapter's history, and reaffirmed their creed: the strong are claimed, the weak are cast aside, and the hunt is sustained by blood. With their holds full and their duty discharged, the chapter vanished into the same shadowed void from which they had came. The Badab War had brought them into the light of Imperial history for the first time in centuries, but it would not hold them there. They had no interest in accolades, politics, or the judgment of other chapters. The oath of exile still bound them, and the Eternal Hunt still called. Some Imperial commanders would later reflect on the strange nature of their involvement. The Carcharodons had appeared when the Loyalists most needed a shock force willing to do what others would not. They had broken the Mantis Warriors, gutted Badab's infrastructure, and left the Successionists too crippled to resist the final assault. Then, with the war won, they had taken their due and disappeared. Like a predator's strike in the deep sea, their intervention was sudden, lethal, and complete. In the silence that followed their departure, the Maelstrom Zone returned to its uneasy equilibrium. The Fire Angels patrolled the Endymion cluster. The Red Scorpions and Star Phantoms withdrew to other war zones, and far out in the dark, unseen by any Imperial augur, the Carcharodons' fleet was already closing in on its next prey. The Badab War had proven one thing beyond doubt. The Carcharodons were real, they were loyal to the Imperium's cause, and if unleashed, they would tear apart anything that stood in their way. The rebels of Badab had learned that truth in blood and fire. The next foe to face them in the outer dark would learn it in silence, just before the killing blow. In the long centuries of their exile and the eternal hunt, the Carcharodons Astra have fought alongside other warriors of the Imperium, but have never truly belonged among them. Their nomadic isolation, uncompromising doctrine, and predator's mindset make them a difficult ally, and a dangerous enemy to those who misjudge them. To fight with the Carcharodons is to experience war stripped to its most primal form. To oppose them is to court annihilation. Among the Adeptus Astartes, respect for the Carcharodons is tempered by wariness. Chapters accustomed to set-piece warfare, or the traditions of fortress monastery life, find the Carcharodons' methods alien. Their campaigns lack the formality and ritual common to most Astartes. Battle honours are not paraded, oaths of moment are spoken in private, kills are tallied in scrimshaw on armour plates rather than inscribed in illuminated rolls. When fighting alongside them, allies often feel as if they're dealing not with fellow warriors, but with a separate breed entirely. apex predators who happen to share the Emperor's cause. The Badab War cemented several of these perceptions. The Fire Angels emerged from the campaign with a rare rapport with the Carcharodons, forged in shared operational theatres and a mutual acceptance of necessary brutality. Both chapters understood that decisive results outweighed the aesthetics of war. This affinity, however, did not extend to all loyalist forces. The Star Phantoms, still embittered by Tyberos' destruction of Badab's infrastructure, viewed them as dangerously undisciplined. The Red Scorpions remained outwardly professional, but privately questioned the wisdom of granting the Carcharodons such broad operational freedom. Beyond the Astartes, the chapter's dealings with the Inquisition have been equally complex. Inquisitors who value results above all else have found the Carcharodons to be invaluable tools, capable of exterminating threats in the farthest reaches without leaving trails of political fallout. Others, particularly those concerned with civilian casualties and the maintenance of Imperial infrastructure, view them as liabilities. The authority they carry in the form of ancient High Lord warrants leaves little room for oversight, and once unleashed, they are all but impossible to rein in until the hunt is done. Perhaps the most telling aspect of their alliances is their ability to work with the Death Watch. The Carcharodons' nomadic existence has given them experience with an array of Xenos species rarely encountered by more centrally based chapters. This expertise makes them valuable recruits for the Long Watch, where individual Carcharodons have served with distinction. In the Death Watch, their cold efficiency is an asset, and the constraints of kill team discipline temper their more destructive instincts. Still, even here, some Watch commanders report an unsettling silence from their Carcharodon brothers, who speak only when necessary and offer little of their own chapter's inner ways. When it comes to adversaries, the Carcharodons are equal opportunity predators. Xenos, heretics, and renegades have all been hunted to extinction beneath their blades. Their time in the Outer Dark has brought them into contact with threats unknown to most Imperial strategists. Slaver kings of human stock who have ruled in isolation for millennia, warp-mutated predator species that infest entire star systems, splinter fleets of the tyrannid hive mind far from the main galactic incursions. Against the Orcs, the Carcharodons fight with surgical aggression. Unlike some chapters that relish prolonged Orc wars as a proving ground, the Carcharodons seek to decapitate wild forces swiftly, destroying war bosses and command structures before the Greenskins can build momentum. In the Eastern Fringe, one such strike is recorded in Fragmentary Mechanicus logs. A nascent Orc empire destroyed in under 3 weeks by coordinated void assaults and targeted assassinations of war bosses. Their encounters with Eldar, both Craftworld and Corsair, are more nuanced. The Carcharodons have fought them without hesitation, yet there are unconfirmed reports from rogue traders of instances where the Carcharodons and Eldar war hosts have ignored one another in the face of a greater threat. Whether these moments of restraint were deliberate coordination, or simply parallel hunts remains unknown. The Carcharodons, predictably, offer no explanation. Chaos, however, receives no such leniency. The chapter's archives, sealed from outsiders, are said to contain detailed kill records of warbands and demon hosts destroyed in the void. In one known engagement, they intercepted a fleet of wordbearers trafficking human captives into the warp. The ensuing battle was fought in near silence, Vox traffic limited to kill count confirmations, until the last traitor ship was boarded and purged. No prisoners were taken. Even these adversarial relationships within the Imperium itself are shaped by the Predator's logic. On rare occasions, their missions have brought them into tense standoffs with other Imperial forces whose objectives have conflicted with theirs. In such cases, the Carcharodons prefer to avoid direct confrontation, until that is, their prey is threatened. When that line is crossed, they strike without hesitation, regardless of heraldry. There are whispered accounts of Imperial Guard regiments vanishing after obstructing a Carcharodon hunt, their fates unrecorded. It is this unpredictable edge that makes the Carcharodons both valued and feared. Allies know their loyalty to the Emperor is absolute, but also that it is expressed in a way utterly alien to conventional Imperial thinking. They fight for victory, not for appearances, and if victory demands destruction on a planetary scale, they will not balk. Adversaries, whether human or alien, quickly learn that once the chapter has their scent, escape is impossible. Over the millennia, the pattern is repeated. The Carcharodons appear, strike with an overwhelming precision, and vanish. To allies, they leave gratitude mixed with unease. To enemies, they leave nothing but wreckage. In this way, the chapter has cultivated a network of relationships defined less by formal pacts and more by the memory of their deeds. Some doors are open to them across the Imperium, others are firmly closed, but the Predators do not seem to care. In the black seas of the galaxy they swim alone, and when they choose to join the hunt with others, it is always on their own terms. Beyond the borders of Imperial star charts lies a gulf of darkness where even the Astronomicon's light fades to a dim glimmer. Here, the galaxy's rim frays into the formless void, and the few worlds that exist are scattered like driftwood in the endless ocean. This is the Halo Stars, a realm of isolation, mystery, and predators that have never known the Emperor's law. For most Imperial forces, it is a place to be avoided. For the Carcharodons Astra, it is prime hunting ground. Imperial cartographers speak of the Halo stars in fragmented data, their records filled with warnings, unstable warp routes, dead systems, stellar anomalies, and hostile lifeforms beyond classification. The Adeptus Mechanicus covets its lost technology, while the Inquisition fears the unmonitored growth of Xenos powers and human heresies. Few have the reach or the will to patrol these depths, but the Carcharodons, free from fixed territory and bound only to the internal hunt, have prowled these starless stretches for centuries. Their presence here is recorded not in any formal campaign chronicles, but in fragmentary survivor accounts, intercepted Vox signals, and occasional Death Watch mission reports. What emerges from these scattered records is a pattern. The Carcharodons hunt in the Halo stars as they do nowhere else, unbound by even those loose conventions they sometimes follow within Imperial space. When they find prey here, there is no negotiation, no attempt at reclamation, only eradication. One such hunt is preserved in the classified archives of the Ordo Xenos, the Nedros Cull. Nedros was a feral world orbiting a dying star, its scattered human tribes locked in a constant war with the indigenous Hroktor, a crustacean-like Xenos species that emerged from the planet's abyssal seas to raid settlements. When an exploratory Mechanicus vessel was destroyed in orbit, its distress signal drew the attention not of the nearest Imperial Navy patrol, but of the Carcharodon strike cruiser Macaria. Landing in the midst of a night raid, the Carcharodons fought in near total darkness, using their low-light vision to devastating effect. The Hroktor were driven back into the seas, but Tyberos' orders were not to repel. The Carcharodons followed their quarry into the abyss, deploying in sealed void armour for an undersea assault. Over 3 days, the Hroktor cities were annihilated, their breeding pools destroyed, and their population reduced to nothing. When they emerged, the Carcharodons did not linger to garrison the world. They left it to the human tribes, stronger now for having survived both the Xenos and the predators who saved them. Another account, pieced together from rogue trader logs, tells of the fall of Vantrell's Belt. Vantrell was a mining cluster along the Halo fringe, where human settlers had made uneasy trade with the nomadic Eldar Corsair band. This arrangement had kept pirate activity to a minimum, but it also kept the system out of Imperial contact. When the Carcharodons arrived, they made no distinction between human and Xenos vessels in the void. The Corsairs were hunted down and destroyed in a running battle through the asteroid fields, their remaining craft driven into the system's star. Then, the Carcharodons turned on the mining platforms, executing any who had dealt with the Eldar and taken the strongest survivors as surface and aspirants. The Imperium would later claim the system without resistance. Not all hunts in the Halo stars are against living foes. The Carcharodons have engaged in several purges of derelict constructs, artificial worlds, void stations, and seemingly abandoned ships drifting between systems. Some of these are infested with gene-stealer cults, others with warp-tainted abominations. In one notorious case, the battle barge Nikor intercepted a vessel identified in Mechanicus records as the Art Mechanicum Perpetua, missing for over 3 millennia. Boarding teams found the crew long dead, their bodies preserved in stasis fields, but each stasis chamber was occupied by something wearing their forms, pale and glassy-eyed with movements just slightly wrong. Whatever they were, the Carcharodons destroyed them and scuttled the Ark without recovering its technology. The strategic value of the Halo stars is negligible to most Imperial planners, yet the Carcharodons return to them again and again. Why? Some believe it is because these hunts keep their skills honed. There are no safe targets here, only apex predators preying on one another. Others suggest that the chapter's oath of exile binds them to remain on the fringes, and the Halo stars are as far from the Imperium's heart as they can go without leaving the galaxy entirely. The prey they face here is unlike anything found closer to Terra. There are reports of void-dwelling entities large enough to consume escort ships whole, human empire fragments ruled by psychers claiming descent from the Emperor, and planet-sized hive creatures whose surface writhe with insectoid life. Against such foes, the Carcharodons adapt with the same ruthless pragmatism they show in all wars: strike where the enemy is weakest, kill without hesitation, and leave nothing that might regenerate. For the few Imperial commanders who have sought their aid in these regions, the Carcharodons are unpredictable allies. They will fight along other forces if their goals align, but their focus is always on their own quarry. Once the prey is dead, they depart, even if the battle for the region is still raging. In the Halo stars, they answer to no campaign but their own plan. To the Carcharodons, these hunts are not diversions, they are the purest expression of their creed. Here, in the Dark Beyond maps, there are no supply chains to protect, no bureaucrats to appease, no propaganda victories to win. There is only the predator and the prey, and the understanding that survival belongs to the one who strikes hardest and first. When they leave no monuments, no garrisons, and no explanations. The worlds of the Halo stars remember them not as liberators, but as an elemental force, grey shapes in the void, arriving without warning, killing without pity, and vanishing like a shark slipping beneath the black water. For the Carcharodons Astra, this is victory enough. For most chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, war is a means to an end. They fight to defend a sector, to conquer a world, or to execute a crusade of finite scope. When the campaign ends, they return to their fortress monastery, rebuild their strength, and await the next summons. The Carcharodons Astra have no such cycle. They have no home to return to, no fixed territory to defend, and no final objective that will ever be achieved. For them, war is not a series of campaigns, it is the entirety of their existence. This is the Eternal Hunt. The Eternal Hunt is both a doctrine and way of life. In its simplest terms, it means the Carcharodons are always at war. Every deployment, every manoeuvre, every pause between battles exists within the Hunt's rhythm. There is no peacetime. When one quarry falls, another is already chosen. This relentless continuity is the defining difference between the Carcharodons and nearly every other Imperial fighting force. The origins of this doctrine are lost to history, but its structure is evident in their behaviour. Their fleets never linger in Imperial space for long, lest their presence be drawn into the political currents of segmentum command. Instead, they move outward, toward the Maelstrom Zone, the Halo Stars, the Ghoul Stars, and the shifting borders where the Imperium meets the unknown. The hunt begins with reconnaissance, sometimes years of it, gathering fragmentary intelligence on a threat before committing to the kill. Choosing the prey is a prerogative of the chapter's leadership, with the Shade Lord holding final authority. This choice is never random. It may be a Xenos empire growing too strong in isolation, a Chaos warband preying on vulnerable trade lanes, or a human domain that has turned from the Emperor's light. The chosen target is studied as a predator studies its quarry, where it feeds, where it rests, and how it reacts to threats. Only when the weaknesses are understood is the strike launched. A critical element of the Eternal Hunt is that it's self-sustaining. Because the Carcharodons cannot rely on Imperial supply chains, each hunt is expected to replenish the fleet. Weapons, armour, fuel, food, and even recruits are taken from the defeated. This is not mere scavenging, it is an ingrained logistical principle. The Red Tithe, infamous after the Badab War, is only one example of how they integrate resupply into their doctrine. Every prey is not just an enemy, but a resource to be broken down and absorbed into the predator's strength. The pace of the Eternal Hunt is dictated by the opportunity rather than calendar. There are campaigns that last mere weeks, where the prey is located, struck, and destroyed before it can react. Others span decades, with Carcharodon forces shadowing their quarry through multiple systems, cutting off its limbs before moving in for the kill. Patience is as vital as ferocity. Strike too soon, and you risk allowing the prey to escape or regroup. Tactically, the Eternal Hunt blends the stealth of the assassin with the overwhelming force of a void predator. Fleets approach unseen, often through uncharted warp routes or masked by interstellar anomalies. The first blow is devastating: orbital strikes, mass boarding actions, or simultaneous assaults on multiple worlds. Once the prey is disorientated, the Carcharodons press the attack relentlessly, denying them time to regroup. There is rarely a drawn-out siege where one occurs. It is because the prey has retreated into an exceptionally fortified position that must be breached to finish the kill. This doctrine has bred a unique mindset among the Carcharodons warriors. Every battle is part of a larger, unending war. There is no expectation of retirement, no thought of standing down after a great victory. Even wounds that would see a battle brother rotated out for recovery in other chapters are often endured in the field. The apothecaries tend to them aboard strike cruisers between hunts, and when a warrior can stand, he returns to the prow. The Eternal Hunt also shapes their interaction with the Imperium at large. They are more likely to intervene in distant or seemingly low priority conflicts than to answer the summons into major war zones already saturated with Imperial forces. This selective engagement has caused frustration among Imperial commanders who view them as unpredictable, even insubordinate. But from the Carcharodons' perspective, the hunt remains theirs to direct. Joining another war is acceptable only when the prey aligns with their own quarry. Notably, the Eternal Hunt is not purely reactive. The Carcharodons maintain long lists of potential future targets, forces that may not yet be an imminent threat but are monitored for signs of dangerous growth. This might be a pirate kingdom steadily expanding its raids, a dormant Necron tomb world showing signs of awakening, or a human sector's planetary governor growing increasingly defiant. Such targets are marked, shadowed, and when the time is right, destroyed before they can even rise beyond control. The moral framework of the Eternal Hunt is alien to most Imperial citizens. Victory is not measured in worlds saved or populations liberated. It is measured in the complete elimination of the prey's capacity to resist. Civilian survival is incidental to this calculation. If the prey is a population, it may be cooled without hesitation. If it is a war fleet, every vessel will be hunted down until no more remain. even if this takes decades. The hunt ends only when the prey is utterly gone. This is why the eternal hunt can last across centuries without losing momentum. There is no terminal goal, no single campaign whose conclusion would end the chapter's mission. The galaxy is vast, the threats to the Imperium are endless, and the Predator's hunger is never sated. Each victory is simply a moment to scent the air for the next quarry. In the void, among the darkness between stars, the eternal hunt is both a creed and a survival strategy. For the Carcharodons Astra, it ensures they remain sharp, feared, and ever in motion. To stand still is to become prey, and the Predators of the Void know only one truth: there is always something to hunt. Among the Predators of the Void, there is a circle within a circle, warriors so deadly and so relentless that even among the Carcharodons Astra they stand apart. They are the Red Brethren, the chapter's elite Terminator cadre, and to face them is to meet the kill stroke of the hunt in the most concentrated form. The Red Brethren are not simply veterans, they are those who have survived countless hunts, often spanning centuries, and whose deeds have become legend within the own chapter's oral history. Their war gear is ancient. Each suit of tactical dreadnought armour is a relic carried through more battles than any one warrior's lifetime. The crimson accents on their otherwise grey plate mark them as the chapter's executioners, and the red is said to represent the blood of all prey claimed in the chapter's name. Their origins as a distinct formation are unclear, as with much of the Carcharodons' history, but the first solid record comes from the Badab War. There, under the direct command of Tyberos the Red Wake, the Red Brethren became synonymous with brutal close quarters boarding actions. They struck like a breaking wave, slow to build but irresistible in impact, shredding through corridors and bulkheads with chain fists, thunder hammers, and the tearing shriek of lightning claws. Where the Red Brethren were unleashed, resistance did not crumble, it was pulverised. Earning a place among the Red Brethren is no formal promotion. There is no fixed number of positions and no ceremonial induction. A battle brother simply finds himself summoned by the Shade Lord or a senior Red Brethren commander when his actions have marked him as worthy. Worthiness is measured in more than kill counts. It is the ability to anchor the most dangerous breach, to endure wounds that would fell others, and to kill without hesitation in the most confined, brutal environments. Once chosen, a warrior takes on more than just armour. The Red Brethren operate as a tightly knit pack within the greater hunt, often deployed in full strength only for the most critical kills. They train obsessively in void assault tactics, breach coordination, and boarding countermeasures. Every member is proficient in multiple heavy weapon systems but favours close-range lethality. The Terminator armour allows them to weather incoming fire long enough to bring their chain blades and power weapons into play. Their equipment is not interchangeable with that of other Carcharodons. Each suit of Terminator armour is a relic, maintained by dedicated tech marines and guarded jealously between campaigns. The markings on each suit tell a story. Scrimshawed kill tallies carved into armour plates, etched sharp-toothed motifs along vambraces, and battle damage left unrepaired as a testament to survival. The crimson paint applied over the grey base is replenished before every deployment, a ritual said to be performed in silence while the armour is disassembled for maintenance. In combat, the Red Brethren are rarely subtle. Where the greater chapter thrives on stealth and sudden shock, the Brethren embody unstoppable force. They are the breach that cannot be sealed, the boarding party that does not stop advancing no matter how many fall before them. If the Carcharodons are the Predators of the Void, the Red Brethren are the jaws closing around the prey's throat. Notable hunts have cemented their reputation. During the Badab War, they led the reactor sabotage raids that destabilised Badab Primaris, cutting through the most heavily defended underhive sectors to plant melter charges. In the Ferric massacre fought in the Ghoul Stars decades later, they boarded a corrupted Mechanicus war station overrun by chaos-tainted servitors. Fighting room by room through the claustrophobic halls, the Red Brethren destroyed the station's plasma cores, collapsing the entire structure into the system's star. Not one Brethren was lost, a feat that only deepened the aura of invincibility around them. But their most terrifying deployment came in the Cilia Rift Purge, where the Carcharodons hunted down a splinter fleet of Tyranids adapting to void combat. The Red Brethren boarded the hive ships directly, fighting in the living corridors of the beast themselves. Lightning claws tore through chitinous armour, thunder hammers pulped bio-titans in narrow passageways, and chain fists ripped open the creature's structural bones. When the purge ended, the hive fleet was nothing more but drifting carcasses, and the Red Brethren's armour was layered in calcified gore. Leadership within the Red Brethren is as enigmatic as the rest of the chapter's command structure. Tyberos himself often leads them into battle, and when he does, the effect is devastating. His presence turns the Brethren from unstoppable force into a tidal wave of slaughter, each kill feeding the momentum of the next. In his absence, senior Brethren act as pack alphas, guiding their brothers by unspoken signals and instinct as much as by vox command. Their role in the eternal hunt is twofold. They are the executioners, brought in when the prey's heart must be crushed, and they are the shield wall, holding the breach so the rest of the chapter can finish the kill. When they are unleashed, it is understood that the hunt is entering its final phase. To the prey, the sight of Crimson Mark Terminator plate advancing through smoke and ruin is not a warning, it is a sentence. Survivors who had fought alongside them often speak of their silence. Even by Carcharodon standards, the Red Brethren are laconic. They do not boast, they do not taunt, and rarely even acknowledge allies outside of operational necessity. Their focus is absolute, their bond to one another wordless. This makes them unnerving even to other Astartes, who are accustomed to at least some ritual or camaraderie between warriors. Outside of battle, the Red Brethren are almost never seen by outsiders. They train apart from the main body of the chapter, aboard secured decks of the Nika and other capital ships, emerging only for war. This isolation preserves their mystique and ensures their skills remain razor sharp. To the Carcharodons themselves, the Red Brethren are the ultimate expression of the hunt's kill stroke. To enemies, they are a nightmare given form, slow, unstoppable and utterly without mercy. And to those rare few who have seen them in action and lived, they are a reminder that in the void, death can come not from a storm or shadow, but as a steady, inescapable advance of Crimson Mark giants. For most chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, void combat is a means to reach the battlefield. Ships are transports, escorts and fire support platforms. For the Carcharodons Astra, the void itself is the battlefield. They are not merely warriors who fight in space, they are hunters whose territory is the cold gulf between stars, and whose prey often dies before setting foot on a planet's surface. Their supremacy in void warfare is no accident. The Carcharodons have no fortress monastery on land. Their fleet is their home, their stronghold and their only sanctuary. Every battle brother grows into war aboard steel decks and under artificial skies, learning to fight in cramped corridors of strike cruisers and the yawning expanse of boarding bays. From aspirants to veterans, every Carcharodon understands the void is not an obstacle, but as an environment in which they thrive. The fleet itself is vast, though its exact composition shifts over centuries as ships are lost and others are captured. At its heart is the Nika, a mighty battle barge that serves as the chapter's flagship and mobile fortress. Around it cluster strike cruisers, escort vessels and captured warships repurposed for the hunt. Every hull bears the scars of countless engagements, patched and reforged in the fleet's own forges. These vessels are not pristine like those of parade ground chapters, they are working predators, built to strike, endure and kill again. Carcharodon void tactics draw heavily on ambush and encirclement. They prefer to emerge from the warp at unexpected vectors, often using unstable routes known only to their navigators. Once in real space, they close quickly to deny the prey time to scatter or call for aid. Long-range bombardment is rarely their first choice, though they possess formidable lance and torpedo batteries. The true kill comes from boarding actions. Boarding assaults are the Carcharodons' art form. Each is meticulously planned, with entry points chosen to isolate and collapse resistance from within. Strike craft swarm ahead to cripple defensive turrets and engines. Boarding torpedoes and assault claws follow, punching through hulls to disgorge squads of grey armed killers into the prey's corridors. Once inside, they move with brutal efficiency, cutting their way toward vital systems, reactor cores, bridge command and life support. The Red Brethren often spearhead these assaults, but every company maintains its own cadre of void assault specialists. Their armour is modified with mag seals and grav clamps, allowing them to fight in the full vacuum if needed. Weapons are chosen for close quarters lethality. Storm bolters, chain fists and combi weapons dominate, with flamers and melter charges for clearing fortified compartments. One of their most devastating void campaigns was the Griffin Reach Purge. A fleet of Chaos warships posing as free traders had begun raiding convoys along the Reach's outer trade routes. Imperial Navy patrols failed to bring them to battle, but the Carcharodons hunted them across 3 systems, using false transmissions to lure them into an ambush. When the trap was sprung, the prey found themselves caught between multiple Carcharodon strike groups emerging from the warp at point-blank range. Within hours, every enemy vessel had been boarded and gutted from the inside. The few survivors taken were offered a swift death rather than interrogation. The Carcharodons' adaptability in the void extends to fighting non-human adversaries. Against Orc war fleets, they avoid slugging matches where greaseskinned brute force could overwhelm them. Instead, they strike at key ships, often the war boss's flagship, knowing with the loss of central leadership will plunge the Orc fleet into chaos. Against Tyranid bioships, they focus fire on synapse creatures and critical biostructures, then launch boarding actions to cripple spawning chambers and digestion pools from within. Their mastery of the void also extends to planetary assaults. By controlling orbital space, they dictate when and where their forces make planetfall, often using drop pods and thunderhawks to hit multiple sites simultaneously, while the fleet maintains fire support. This seamless integration between ship and ground operations is rare even among Astartes, and it allows them to sustain the momentum of the hunt across the transition from void to surface. Training for void mastery is constant. New recruits begin with shipboard drills before they are even fully implanted, learning to navigate zero-gravity environments and fight in pressurised and depressurised conditions. Veteran squads regularly practice boarding exercises against each other, with simulated hull breaches and reactor failures to test their response times. The Tech Marines play a critical role in maintaining the fleet's readiness, ensuring that every weapon, boarding torpedo and assault craft is ready to launch at a moment's notice. One of the most unnerving aspects of Carcharodon void warfare is their silence. Many fleets broadcast demands for surrender or issue threats before closing to attack. The Carcharodons say nothing. Their ships run with minimal external Vox traffic, their hull markings often unlit until they are within visual range. To the prey, the first sign of their approach may be the sudden impact of a boarding torpedo, or the flicker of a muzzle flash within their own corridors. To fight the Carcharodons in the void is to fight the masters of their own element. They understand the psychology of prey cornered in the cold. Panic sets in faster when every bulkhead feels like a trap, when every shadow could conceal an advancing giant. They exploit this ruthlessly, striking from unexpected angles, cutting off retreat routes, and using their prey's own ships against them by venting compartments or overloading power grids. Victories in the void leave little behind. Captured ships are either stripped for resource or absorbed into the fleet, their original markings replaced with the grey and crimson of the hunt. Those deemed too tainted, damaged or strategically useless are scuttled without hesitation. The Carcharodons take what strengthens them and discard the rest, ensuring their fleet remains lean and lethal. In the endless gulf between stars, the Carcharodons Astra are not merely travellers, they are the apex predators of the void. Their ships are fangs, their boarding squads are the bite, and their mastery of this killing ground ensures that no prey can escape once it's chosen. For them, the darkness between worlds is not empty, it is alive with the scent of the next kill. No matter where the Carcharodons Astra appear, whether in the black reaches of the Halo stars, the shadowed sectors of the Maelstrom Zone, or among the farthest frontier colonies, they always vanish again into the dark. They never settle, never establish a permanent base, and never linger long enough to be drawn into the politics of the Imperium. This is not mere preference, it is the result of something older and more binding, the Oath of Exile. The origins of this oath are among the chapter's most closely guarded secrets. There are no surviving Imperial edicts that explain it, no High Lord's decree preserved in the archives of Terra, only fragments of implication buried in the ancient writs of authority. One such document, examined by Ordo Astartes savants after the Badab War, grants the Carcharodons near total operational autonomy, but contains a cryptic condition: to hunt in the black until the debt is paid. What that debt refers to is unknown. Some Imperial historians argue it is a punishment for an ancient disgrace, perhaps dating back to the Great Crusade or the earliest foundings. Others suggest it's a voluntary penance, a self-imposed exile to atone for some long-forgotten sin. Among the most whispered theories is that they descend from one of the lost legions erased from history, their existence tolerated only under the condition they remain far from the Imperium's heart. Within the chapter, the Oath of Exile is not treated as a burden, it is their creed. Every recruit is told, from the moment he survives the implantation process, that the Carcharodons are sworn never to remain within the core of Imperial space except at the express call of the Emperor's will. This vow is not symbolic, it is enforced with absolute discipline. Even after the Badab War, when many chapters returned to their home sectors to rebuild, the Carcharodons turned their prows outward and vanished into the void without ceremony. The oath shapes everything about how they fight and live. Without a home world, the fleet is their only sanctuary, and every hunt must provide the resources to sustain it. They cannot rely on steady tithes from Imperial worlds, nor can they recruit in bulk from a single population. Instead, they draw aspirants from conquered prey, rescued populations, and feral worlds at the edge of the galaxy. Their exile also keeps them apart from Imperial politics. This is both a strength and a curse. Freed from the obligations of defending a fixed realm, they can strike anywhere, pursuing threats others cannot reach. But it also means they have few lasting alliances within the Adeptus Astartes or the Imperial hierarchy. When they arrive to aid an Imperial force, it is as outsiders, sometimes welcomed, sometimes mistrusted. When they depart, there is no guarantee when or if they will return. Some Inquisitors have tried to use the Oath of Exile to their advantage, sending the Carcharodons to eliminate threats too politically dangerous for more visible forces. These missions are often successful, but once completed the chapter slips away again, ignoring any further summons. To the Carcharodons, an oath to the Emperor is not the same as an oath to his servants. They answer to the will behind the throne, not its bureaucrats. The psychological effect of the oath is profound. For generations, Carcharodons have known no home but the void and no purpose but the hunt. This has bred a warrior culture that is both detached and intensely focused. Without the distractions of planetary governance, commerce, or local politics, their existence narrows to a singular goal: find the prey, destroy it, and move on. The galaxy's borders are their hunting ground, and the darkness beyond its edge their territory. The few recorded instances of the Carcharodons operating within the Imperium's core worlds are tied to extraordinary circumstances. The Badab War was one. Another was the Kassoon Cleansing, when a chaos cult infiltrated the shipyards of a vital segmentum naval base. Even then their presence was temporary, and once the threat was gone, they withdrew without waiting for thanks or reward. Why then do they keep their oath so rigidly? Some theories point to the secrecy of their gene seed origins. Remaining at the fringes may protect them from political scrutiny. Others suggest the oath is tied to some ancient pact with the High Lords, one that allows them to exist only so long as they remain beyond the reach of certain factions. The most radical theory is that the oath is not imperial at all, that it is a pact made between the chapter and a Primarch or other figure lost to imperial record. Inside the chapter there is no debate. The oath is the law of the hunt, and the hunt defines them. Breaking it would mean ceasing to be Carcharodon. In their oral traditions, it is said that the Voidfather cast them into the dark with a command to cleanse the stars until he calls them home. Until that summons come, they will remain where the light is thin, the prey is plentiful, and the scent of danger is thick in the void. And so they endure. Far from the eyes of terror, their presence felt only when the grey shapes of their ships loom in the night and the prey begin to vanish. The oath of exile is not a sentence. It is the ocean they swim in, the current that carries them from kill to kill. It is as much a part of the chapter as their gene seed, their war gear, or their name. For the Carcharodons Astra, the exile will never end. Not until the debt is paid, the summons is given, and the predator is called home from the endless sea of stars. Until then, the oath is the horizon they will never cross. Thus ends the transmission of Dominissimo Voxlore. If you have endured, then you have glimpsed the truths that swim in the abyss, truths only meant for the strong and steadfast. Mark this channel upon your data slates with a seal of subscription, and stand ready for the next broadcast from the darkness between the stars. Until that time, remain vigilant, remain loyal, and remember, in the endless void, the hunter is always watching.